Achievers. Hi, I'm back with the 25 books of 2025, according to 2024 in Great Yarmouth. And it's by Jon Krakauer, Into the Wild. Right, so now made a film, which I did see, but it was several years ago. So anyway, but the film was good. There you go. That was quite long. In April 1992, Christopher McCandless set off into the Alaskan wilderness. He gave his savings to charity, abandoned his car and his possessions, and burnt the money in his wallet, determined to live a life of independence. 4 months later, he was found starved to death. In piecing together the final travels of this extraordinary man, John writes about the heart of the wilderness, its terrible beauty, and its unforgiving harshness. Right. In doing so, he's written a modern classic of travel literature that glitters dangerously with man's desire for adventure and his self-destructive impulses. And it's interesting too, okay, because it's not just okay about Chris McCandless. It's also okay about others who've gone before him, other adventurers, other thrill seekers, people who wish to live the life, I guess, okay, with more pioneering times and then live out into the wild, and some who were successful and some were not. It's very, very interesting as well. Very, very interesting. So, okay, let's be here, right? When he's been Chris has been picked up by a hitchhiker, okay, it's a bit here, right? Gillian, a union electrician, was on his way to Anchorage. He told Alex he dropped him off whatever he wanted. Alex's backpack looked as though it weighed only 25 or 30 pounds, which struck Gillian, an accomplished hunter and woodsman, as an improbable light load for a stay of several months in the back country, but so early in the spring. He wasn't carrying anywhere near as food and gear as you would expect to be carrying for that kind of trip. So even it starts out, okay, Chris, who lives under the name Alex or Alexander Supertramp, okay, he is massively out of his depth. He's going into this wilderness, okay, to survive, where everyone can see that he's not carrying enough equipment. He's not trained enough. This is a book, okay, about a man's folly. Now, first of all, a full sensitivity, okay, to Chris and his family and everyone else, okay, who knew him. But this book is very sensitive in its approach, but doesn't hold back with the foolish actions Chris took. How everyone advised against him, how everyone tried to help him. But those who did, he turned his back on society. Right. Because, and I hate to say this word, okay, he thought he knew better. He thought he knew better. Okay? Right. And when it comes to the famous bus that he survived on, the bus which, by the way, due to individuals who were trying to find the bus themselves and actually passed away in the process, the bus was now taken away, and up to this point, I'm not sure it's yet it's on display, but it's going to be held at the University of Alaska. That is something I do know. Right. When it comes to the bus, right, it's this, right. A vintage International Harvester from the 1940s, the derelict vehicle is located 25 miles west of Healy as the Raven flies, rusted incautiously in the fireweed behind the Stampede Trail, just beyond the boundary of Delaney National Park. The engine is gone, several bottles are cracked or missing altogether. Right. Weathered letters indicates the old machine was once a part of the Fairbanks City Transit System Bus 142. It says it's unusual 6 months to pass without the bus seeing a human visitor. By in early September 1992, 6 people in 3 separate parties happened to visit the remote vehicle on the same afternoon. That was the day Chris was found. Right. Interesting too, okay, because, okay, let me say this, okay, but Chris, he was a man who was so against essentially, you know, corporations, conglomerates, that kind of thing. But the thing is, he hiked out, he walked into the wilderness, not knowing that there would be a bus there. He stumbled across the bus that became his home, that became his hub. But the fact is, he was so ill-equipped. Right, it was just by chance he found the bus to remain on for all that time. That became his home. But the thing is this, okay, that bus isn't nature. It was abandoned by man. Right. It was abandoned by man, okay, by humans, and it became his home. So, but that was his, well, his easy home, if you will. In a way, I think that Chris thought it would be so easy to go out into nature and live there. But the fact is, from that very moment, he was on the bus. He wasn't in the wild. He died out there. And it even says straight away how close Christopher was to humanity. Right. Only 25 miles west of Healy, just beyond the boundary of the Delaney National Park. So he was 25 miles at all times. his stampede, okay, for an Alaskan is just pretty much like a normal hike, if you will. I mean, Alaskans themselves, okay, it's mentioned in this book the response of the Alaskans who have sympathy for his situation but shake their head at him becoming some kind of status symbol because it was his mistakes that caused his downfall, and that's sad as it is. Sad as it is. Right, right. And when it comes to his family, right, it's Chris grew up in a life of privilege. He grew up in a family of wealth. They didn't start out with money, but they started off quite poor, if you will, from poor backgrounds. But they worked hard and expected careers, okay, to make money. Chris grew up with privilege. Now, as I mentioned in this book, but there is an undertone, okay, privilege making a part of this, right? Christopher set out on his odyssey, okay, as Alexander Supertramp. However, the fact is, okay, he was able to make friends easily. He was well versed, okay, in piano playing. At one point, when he's out, okay, with his people on his travels, he used to stay, okay, and plays the piano, and no one knew that he could play. He had a privileged life, a fantastic education, and that gave him the skills to be able to blend in quite easily, okay, to become a part of communities of ease. Right. So the fact is that his privilege did have a play on how far he got. Here we are. Christopher felt estranged from his parents and siblings. He found a Saga family in Westerberg and his employees, most of whom lived in Westerberg cottage home. A few blocks in central town is a simple two-story Victorian in Queen Anne style, with a big cottonwood towering over the front yard. Right, here you go. So it was estranged from his parents. Estranged from his parents, and it's kind of vague in the detail, but one thing I have read in the meantime, not in this book, but I've read in other sources, that Christopher may have had a big crisis of identity because essentially he was the second family of his father. Now, his father had been married previously and then married his mother, but there was not a divorce in between. Christopher was the secondary family. Christopher was of a bigamous line, if you will, of his family tree, which is absolutely heartbreaking. I'm actually going to link to some articles, okay, which actual Wikipedia page, sorry, explains this in more detail. So with that, that made him cause a crisis of identity, which meant him kind of seeking something new and fresh, basically cast off shackles of that name because he didn't know where he stood. Right. Yes, it's very, very sad, very, very sad. And I do know, okay, that Christopher's sister has also written a book, which no, I haven't read, which probably explain things in more detail, but hey. And it's here, okay, right. Um, when his family go off to visit him after he finishes college, right, here we go. Driving out Wares intended to invent an utterly new life for himself, one in which he'll be free to wallow in unfiltered experience, to symbolise the complete severance from his previous life. He adopted a new name. No wonder he answered to Chris McCandless. He was now Alexander Supertramp, master of his own destiny. Master of his own destiny, okay? So he gave all his money to charity, okay? His trust fund to charity, gave it all to Oxfam, and set up on this life, right, to um, start anew. And when it comes to Ian Finch, okay, like his car, and there's a bit further along, okay, where he complains that his parents wanted to buy him a new car because his old car was kind of on its last legs. He was very, very attached to it. It was like over 10 years old at this point. And he was like, well, they figure they can buy my love, and he absolutely turned it down. But when the car does break down, Christopher kind of abandons it. He buries some ammunition. He removes the license plates. Incidentally, the car is actually found and fixed up by the cops, and it becomes a one of their cars. Here you go. Right, it's for here. But the thing is this, right? When a flash flood totally destroys everything, right? Here you go. So if being destroyed over a ton of events, moreover, Mechanics was exhilarated. It saw the flash floods as an opportunity to shed unnecessary baggage. He concealed the cars best as he could beneath a brown tarp, stripped of his Virginia plates, and then hid them. He buried his Winchester deer hunting rifle and a few other possessions that he might one day want to recover. The ingestion were done both Faru and Toy Story proud. He arranged his paper currency in a pile on the sand, a perfect little stack of 105s and 20s, and put a match to it. $123 in legal tender was promptly reduced to ash and smoke. Right. He burned all his money to start anew. He wanted to live a life care without money, but sadly, the reality is, this mentality he had of going around traveling, you know, had no basis in reality. At a certain point, you do need money to survive. You do need money to survive. And there's a point further along, okay, where he's complaining that when he goes to shelters, what they do, okay, is preach at him. What I say is what they do. And when he does have to take on a job, he starts working at McDonald's. Absolutely fine. Absolutely problems with that, okay? So, but the thing is this, is he is so, at this point, doesn't like to be told what to do. Even like basic things. Like he goes into work smelling. It doesn't want people to know, okay, that he's homeless. And so he's saying, like, say, oh, do you want to lift home? No, it's fine. I'll just walk. I'm absolutely fine. But when people say that he comes to work smelling bad, which is a big deal, okay? That's a very, very big deal. But the fact is, okay, he's got such a disdain for conglomerates and corporate America, if you will, that also has disdain for the people who work within his societies to go into work smelling. And when people actually are considerate enough, okay, to say, oh, do you need help with anything? Do you want me to get you some soap, right? He rebuffs it. It's big. Okay? When Zaza, who's a manager, says this, okay, when Chris finally quit, it was probably because of me. When he first started working, he was homeless and showed up to work smelling bad. Wasn't up to McDonald's standards, so he'd come in smelling the way he did. So finally, they delegated me to tell me he needed to take a bath more often. Ever since I told him, there was a clash between us. And then the other employees, they were just trying to be nice. They started asking him if he needed some soap or anything. That made him mad, you can tell, but never showed it outright. About 3 weeks later, he just walked out the door and quit. The fact is that his own colleagues asked if he was okay, if he wanted help, did he need anything, and he just threw it back in their face and just quit. Right, because he has a disdain, okay, for um also plenty of people, okay, who work in his organisations. He can't. That's the arrogance I get from Chris. He has an arrogance about people who work for these organisations. That the fact is that he rebuffed the offers for help, okay, and coming to work smelling unhygienic. That's unhygienic for everyone involved. Potentially creating a toxic work environment. Right. So you can see why someone like Chris actually does really, really um, split people's opinion, of his actions and what he did. Because I see a man who was very arrogant. Okay, he was a natural charmer. He was from a good family. He was very, very kind and very, very sweet, but also arrogant too. Okay, and the fact is that when he meets people, now they're charmed to him, okay, because he's a good conversationalist. He's a good reader. He discusses everyone. And the fact is, when he's at various locations, okay, this place, okay, in Bullhead City, okay, Baseline Road, he starts talking, okay, about Jack London. Here you go, who Chris was infatuated with the romance, okay, of living in the Alaskan wilderness. Here you go. McCandless has been infatuated with Jack London since childhood. London's fervent condemnation of capitalist society, his glorification of the primordial world, his champion of the great unwashed, all of it mirrored McCandless' passions. Mesmerized by London's turgid portrayal in Alaska and the Yukon, McCandless read and reread The Call of the Wild, White Fanged, The Lord of Fire and Ice of the North, The Wit of Pawtucket. He was so enthralled by these tales that he seemed to forget that they were works of fiction. Exactly. They were works of fiction. Jack London died on his estate, okay? Here you go. McCandless conveniently overlooked that the London himself had spent a single winter in the north and that he died at his own hand at his California estate at the age of 40. A fat drunk, obese and pathetic, maintaining a sedentary existence that barely scores scant resemblance to the ideals he espoused in print. Jack London was a fiction writer. White Fang is fiction. He wasn't in the West for that long ago to write these books. They were fiction, but to McCandless they were real. He read The Call of the Wild and White Fang and wanted that life. Right. But the thing is that life does not exist and it never existed. It's fiction. He blurred fiction with fact. And that was his downfall. That was very, very much his downfall. And once again, I found so frustrating. And the book makes it clear how Chris's actions condemned him. Absolutely. Is various things where people are going out the way to help him and saying that people who have actually been out in the Alaska wilderness, people who actually know the terrain, people who give him advice, and he just chooses to ignore it. Okay, here we are. When he's chatting to Burrs, another individual called Burrs, okay, who's telling him, okay, what we need in Alaska, and they actually start what exactly do you have, right? I was in an argument. Burrs also got McCandless to accept some long underwear and other warm clothes she thought he needed in Alaska. He eventually took it to shut me up, but the day he left, I found most fit in the van. Right, he pulled out the pack when we weren't looking. Alex was a great kid, but he could really make me mad sometimes. But the thing is this. Christopher, under his Alex guise, okay, Alexander Supertramp, um, was he survived quite a lot. He basically canoed through Mexico. He survived things, okay, which must kill most normal people. And that gave him a full sense of security. And it is heartbreaking here, the people he met and the impact he had on their lives, okay? And one thing is this, when he meets Ron France. Now, I actually know the real name of this man, and he passed away a few years ago. However, I'm not going to say it out of respect for him, who was a born-again Christian, who basically met Chris, loved Chris like a grandson, actually wanted to adopt him. Right. And the thing is, he actually convinces Ron to basically pack up his life and start traveling. And Ron actually does that. Ron France does that. He actually goes on an odyssey of his own, okay, in his own camper van. But the thing is this, is you make it clear how Christopher's attitude to this kind of thing, okay, when France is saying, okay, to Alex, Chris, how are you going to survive? What are you going to do? And this bit here, okay, look, Mr. France, you don't need to worry about me. I have a college education. I'm not destitute. I'm living like this by choice. By choice. He chose to live like this. It was his choice. Okay? And it is really, really sad, okay, how fans wanted so much for Alex to stay. So much, okay, that the fact that he was always there for each other. They had a very kind of like father-son, father-grandson kind of relationship. And one thing I find truly, truly heartbreaking is this man, okay, who loved God and absolutely loved people and was on an odyssey of his own. When he found out that Chris had died, this happened to him. Here you go. When Alex left for Alaska, I prayed and asked God to keep his finger on the shoulder of that one. I told him that boy was special, but he let Alex die. So on December 26th, when I learned what happened, I renounced the Lord. I withdrew my church membership and became an atheist. I decided I couldn't believe in a God that would let something that terrible happen to a boy like Alex. Okay? So I wasn't used to drink, and I went out to the desert and and bought a bottle of whiskey. I went out to the desert and drank it. I wasn't used to drinking, so it made me sick. Hoped it killed me, but it didn't. It just made me real, real sick. I just find it very, very sad that someone like Vance, who loved Alex at work, Chris so much. So I just think that that's very, very sad. And this is juxtaposed, okay, with individuals who are also going on a journey of adventure, if you will. Some who've made it to the end and some haven't. But the thing is this, one thing I did like is people's actually reacting, because John, the author of this book, he wrote an article that got a lot of attention. And it totally, once again, split individuals. And the thing is this, once again, I did love Alaska's kind of, not condemnation, but the fact is they were not going to glorify this man, like it makes me kind of folk hero. They see Chris as a cautionary tale for this time. And it has made it clear, okay, through a letter, okay, um, by, here you go, by Nick Jans, here you go, this bit here. His ignorance, which could have been cured by a USGS quadrant and a Boy Scout manual, is what killed him. And why I feel for his parents and no sympathy for him. Such willful ignorance amounts to disrespect for the land and paradoxically demonstrates the same sort of arrogance that resulted in the Edox Valdez spill. Just another case of unprepared, overconfident men bumbling around out there and screwing it up because they lack the requisite humanity. It's all a matter of degree. And that is true. That is heartbreaking, but that is true. Okay? Everything in his life, everything his life could have been saved if he had the basic knowledge of how to survive in the wilderness, not in books. It felt like he'd never really been out in the wilderness before. He'd never ever done any prep for this. Now he survived the case Alexander Supertramp get on his trails, but that was the thing, he was always close to people. He was literally going to be alone, and he thought alone, okay, would find what he was looking for, but it wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. Okay? But the thing is, when it comes to Christopher's early life, it kind of flashes back within his life, and it shows how kind of privileged his life was, and how heartbreaking it is, because this bit here, okay, right, It's impossible to know what murky convergence of chromosomal matters, parent-child dynamics, alignment of the cosmos was responsible, but Christopher Johnson McCandless came into the world with unusual gifts and a world not easily deflected from its trajectory. At the age of 2, he got up in the middle of the night, found his way outside, awakened his parents, and entered a house down the street to plunder a neighbour's candy drawer. From the earliest age, he was exploring. He was defiant. He didn't like the rules whatsoever. But yet he was so talented. So talented it was unbelievable. Okay, when this is from Christopher's own father. Christopher has so much natural talent, Walt said. But we tried to coach him or polish his skill to bring up the final 10%. A wall went up, resisted instructions of any kind. I'm a serious racquetball player and taught Chris to play when he was 11. So I was 15 or 16 he was beating me regular. But the thing is this. He had a natural talent, but when it comes to finesse, okay, it's not enough to have a natural talent. Natural talent is wonderful, but you've got to finesse this as well. You can't just be a fantastic runner. You've got to learn everything about it, okay? Speed, the weather, everything. When it comes to those kind of nuances, kind of like the rules of the game, if you will, he didn't like the rules of the game. So he just abandoned the game. Right. That was him. That was Christopher. Here you go. And it is quite interesting too, okay, about when it comes to Chris's privilege, is this bit here. Right. Her son, the teenage Torstein, believed that wealth was shameful, corrupting, inherently evil, which is ironic because Chris was a natural born capitalist, a keen knack for making a buck. Right. Chris was always an entrepreneur, but he said with a laugh, always. Because when he was young, he grew and sold vegetables in his neighbourhood. He knew how to make a buck. Okay. But the thing is this, when it comes to his life, you can also see the kind of building blocks that made McCandless the way he is, which is very sad and heartbreaking. Once again, I feel sympathy for his parents, of course, and his friends and family who knew him, who were devastated by his passing. But this bit here, okay? Chris had gotten lost in the Mojave Desert and near succumbed to dehydration. His parents were alarmed when they heard about this, but unsure how to persuade Chris to exercise more caution in the future. Chris was good at almost everything he tried, Ford reflects, which made him extremely overconfident. Right? When you attempted to talk him out of something, he wouldn't argue, he'd just nod politely and do exactly what he wanted. Right? So, even at this point, no matter what anyone said to Chris, no matter advice they gave to Chris, he would have gone out in the Alaskan wilderness. He would have gone out in that Alaskan wilderness and his fate would have been the same. And it's interesting too when it comes to Christopher. Now, Christopher was a man with many friends. He made relationships very easily. However, he also liked to have his own type phase. It was like he was like storing up energy to actually talk to people. He didn't like the rules. He didn't like the rules of the game, if you will. He was against corporations again, capitalist society, if you will. And it is very interesting. It's when it comes to this, it's like many people, Chris judged artists and close friends by their work, not their lifestyle. He was temperamentally incapable of extending such lenity to his father, and what McCandless in stone fashion would dispense a fatherly judgment to Chris, Corinne, or their half siblings. Chris would fixate on his father's own lessons stolen behaviour many years earlier, and silently denounced him as a sanctimonious hypocrite. Chris carefully kept score, and over time he worked himself into a collar of self-righteous indignation that was possible to keep bottled up. So the whole thing of him going out into the wilderness was basically a rejection of the ideals that his family had, his father had. And sadly, it ended very badly. So it's an interesting kind of dynamic as well, okay, the building blocks, how whilst Chris basically judges people, okay, by their, I guess, by their art, okay, not the artist, but his father, he just made very many mistakes. I know that his sister Corinne's book has gone into more detail, but maybe they would have come to a kind of reconciliation at some point. I mean, Chris must have had, when it comes to his family's marital issues, must have had a definite crisis of kind of, where do I stand in all this? Where do I stand? Here you go. And also it also comes to Jon Krakauer, the author of talking about his own Alaskan adventure. He's also, one thing that made him basically the perfect person to write this book. It's the fact that he's also been out there and he was young as well. He was around Chris's age. He survived by the skin of his teeth. He learned, he grew from that experience, okay, of climbing a mountain, but he walked out unscathed. He walked out unscathed, okay, but he mentions basically the folly of youth. At the age of my youth, death remained an abstract concept as a non-Euclidean geometry or marriage. I didn't appreciate its terrible finality or the havoc it could wreak on those who entrusted the deceased with their hearts. I was stirred by the dark mystery of mortality. I couldn't resist steering up to the edge of doom and peering over the brink. The hint of what concealed in the shadows terrified me, but I caught sight of something in the glimpse of those forbidden elemental riddles that was less compelling than the sweet hidden pearls of a woman's sex. In my case, I'm believing Chris McCandless. It was a very different thing from wanting to die. No, Chris did not want to die. Chris definitely did not want to die. He walked out into the wilderness and did not make it back, but in no way did he want to die. And also is this, okay, it's this man managed to survive for over 100 days in the Alaskan wilderness. So he was tenacious enough, okay, to actually, he didn't just, suffer after 5 minutes. He made it work for over 100 days, which is commendable. It's only when he decided to return to nature, so return from nature into society, that it all went bad for him and he was trapped. Right, that's important to remember. Right, he has managed to survive. But the thing is, once again, at various points along this way, is Kafka makes it clear how out of his depth Chris was, Chris's folly, if you will. And this bit here, okay, it's right. Here we are. McCandless was candid with Stucky. That's someone he meets in his travels, but has tended to spend the summer alone in the bush with the land. So it's not something he wanted. So it was something he wanted to do since he was little. So he didn't want to see a single person, no airplanes, or science civilization. He wanted to prove to himself that he could make it on his own without anyone else's help. Here you go. Stucky and McCandless arrived in Fairbanks on the afternoon of April 25th. The older man took the boy to the grocery store and bought a big bag of rice, and Alex said he wanted to go to the university to study up on what kind of plants he could eat, berries and things like that. I told him, Alex, you're too early. There's still 3 foot of snow on the ground. There's nothing growing yet. His man was pretty well made up. He was chomping at the bit to get out there and start hiking. The fact that he didn't know what the right berries to eat, the fact he didn't even know the wilderness. He was walking now. The Alaskan wilderness is much different from virtually any other. Right. It's different, okay, from going out to the Mojave Desert, okay? It's brutal out there. I mean, the Alaskans grow up with the terrain, okay? They know how difficult it can be. But the fact is that he was going out to the wilderness and he's like, oh, maybe I should go to a library and read some books. Now, he would sit there, okay, and read books, okay, of fiction, but he never ever read books about how to truly survive in the wild. I mean, when that letter to John said he could have survived, okay, if he had like a Boy Scout manual, that's true. That is absolutely true. He would have survived. But hey, right. And the thing is this: when he finally gets out there, without a map, without anywhere, he finds a bus, he settles in, and his first days are quite glorious. He's in the wild. He is 20 miles from safety. But anyway, here you go. But the thing is, reality hits, and it hits so hard and straight away. Reality, however, was quick to intrude a McCandless revere. A difficulty in killing game, and the daily journal entries into final week in the bush include weakness, no dinner, and disaster. He saw not shoot a grizzly on the 2nd of May, shot up and missed some ducks on May the 4th, and finally killed and ate a spruce grouse on May the 5th, but he not shoot anything else to May the 9th, when he bagged a small squirrel, by which point he's written 4th day famine. Right. Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, when he does kill a moose, okay, when he does finally kill a moose, he has no idea, and those things are massive, by the way. And when he doesn't kill a moose, he actually kills a caribou, by the way. It says moose, it's a caribou. There's a lot of debate going back and forth. So it's the thing is this: it's when it comes to the moose, right? He doesn't know how to prepare it, or treat it, or dry it out, or take care of it, and it spoils quickly. It spoils absolutely quickly. And though McCandless was enough of a realist to know that hunting game was an unavoidable component of living off the land, always been ambivalent about kin animals, that ambivalence turned to remorse soon after he shot the moose. It was relatively small, weighing probably about 600 or 700 pounds, but nevertheless amounted to a huge quality of meat. Being it was more indefensible to waste any part of an animal that has been shot for food, McCandless spent 6 days trying to preserve what he had killed before it spoiled. But of course it spoiled because he didn't know how to treat it correctly. Okay? Didn't know how to preserve the meat. Absolutely no idea. Yes. So, and the fact is, okay, he was going out to shoot and live off the land, but he was a bit about killing animals. I'm sorry, but if you're out in the wilderness, you cannot be ambivalent about killing them. You may not like it, but you cannot have that mentality. Right. And the sad thing is, it's when Christopher decides to return to civilization, this is the true thing. He gets to the point, okay, where he's unable to survive, and like this, so he decides to leave. It's satisfied apparently with what he learned within his 2 months solitary life in the wild. McCandless decided to return to civilization. He was trying to bring his grand and fun adventure to a close, get himself back to the world of man and women, where he could chug a beer, talk philosophy, for strangers with tales of what he had done. And that's the thing. In right, in full, right, here you go, have a beer with strangers and talk philosophy. With he wants to go out there and tell everyone what he's just done. In his mind, okay, he's just become Jack London. Go there to tell everyone again a story of his adventure, how he survived for 2 months in the Alaska wilderness. Right. But the thing is Christopher cannot make it way back. The bank's too swollen. The rapids are too fast. And the sad thing is this, he would have avoided his fate if he just brought a map. Of all the things he didn't bring on his journey and ones were offered to him, he never once brought a map. Because maps, maps told what everything was. Maps were planners. Essentially, he got rid of the map, and so he would use the map in his mind. He would go out there, okay, like the great pioneers, and find everything that he was needed without a map. But if he had a map, he would have found safety. Okay? And that's the most tragic thing. To go out without anything, but you need a map. And not having a map is actually a massive discourtesy to those who out there won't perform, okay, to make that map. Those maps exist for a reason. The great pioneers actually had maps. They're the ones doing the mapping. So the ones that came next will have an easier route. But anyway, if McCandless had walked a mile or so upstream, he would have discovered that the river broadened into a maze of braided channels. If he scouted carefully by trial and error, he might have found a place where the braids were only chest deep. As long as the current was running, he would have certainly knocked him off his feet. By dog paddling, hopping along the bottom. If he drifted downstream, he could conceivably have made it across, been carried into the gorge, or succumbed into hypothermia. Right, but no, yeah, no. And once again, Alaskan's attitude to this, their reaction to this, is really, really telling. Here you go. Right. Not only McCandless died because he was stupid, one Alaskan correspondent observed, but the scope of his self-styled adventure was so small as to ring rather pathetically, squatting out in erect bars a few miles out of Healy, potting jays and squirrels, mistaking a caribou for a moose, and one word for the guy, incompetent. Okay? Right. So, yeah, absolutely. So interesting too. Interesting to see again how they view, because this obviously happened within close to them, their land, their country. They don't understand it better. But the fact is that I think in his mind, Chris saw himself as some kind of great writer, some kind of great philosopher. He wanted to sit there, okay, and talk philosophy, okay, with people, that kind of thing, the meaning of life and everything else. But the thing is this, his big adventure, he didn't bring a journal, he just wrote his notes in books. The books that he had, he just wrote alongside them, they became his journals. Right. It's, right. The entries in McCandless' journal contain few abstractions about wilderness, or for that, few ruminations of any kind. It's got mention of the surrounding scenery. Instead, he talks about food. What he talks about in this book is food. And but here you go. But the romantic bed. This is from a cultural ecologist, Paul Shepherd. The romantic Bedouin does not dote on scenery, pan landscapes on a pole, and non-natural natural history. There is a profound transaction with nature. There is no place for abstraction or aesthetics or natural philosophy, which can be separated from the rest of his life. Nature, relationship to it are a deadly serious matter. That's the thing, a deadly serious. So that's the thing, he's surrounded by the Alaska wilderness, but it's got to the point where he's not looking at the beauty of the wild landscape, he's just trying to survive. He's just trying to survive, and one of the last things he realises, to his folly, was that how much he needed people. My heart does break for what Chris went through. He starved to death in the back of that bus in a sleeping bag. That's the reality. And it is truly, truly sad how everyone on this journey, as mentioned in this book, gave him advice, tried to help him, but he made a decision to ignore it. He ignored that advice. And one of the last things he ever wrote before he passed away, okay, was happiness is only real when shared. Here you go. Here you go. And, but he passed away. He passed away of starvation. He passed away of starvation. And then he was found a few weeks later. And that's my saddest thing. This book I absolutely loved. It wasn't quite in depth as I imagined it. I thought I'd go into real deep depth. But basically, as the author never knew Chris, I only knew Chris from other people, tried to put up this image of a man. And it's quite interesting too because it doesn't really say it. But there's some kind of suggestion that Chris may have been neurodivergent or neurotypical. A thing where he's natural talented, doesn't like the rules of the game. When it came to relationships, he's never ever seen with anyone. He's never ever seen. He basically has a kind of celibacy, if you will, which could be. He could have had. So yeah. So he enjoyed people's company, but kept them close. He never had anything physical, right? So it's possible that he was asexual, which is a possibility. And the fact is, he was so disparaging of the rules that could have kept him alive. Maybe a suggestion here, some kind of neurotypical, the way, okay, that and people try to install the rules, even when it was for his own good. He turned their back on them because he thought he knew better. He had a natural confidence, okay, and I'm saying there's someone who actually is, okay, so he has natural, so I'm saying someone who actually is neurotypical, so that type of suggestion, so, but whatever was going through his mind at the time, it is truly, truly sad what happened to him, and my heart does break for his family. However, I'm not going to sit here and idolise Chris as some kind of folk hero. He's most definitely not. His story is compelling, but it's also a cautionary tale. Because all he needed to get out of his adventure, when he realised, okay, that he had to return to civilization for his own safety, was a map. And I'm signing off here. So, The Wild, Into the Wild, by Jon Krakauer. Yeah, please read this book. Bye now.